Hi, this is Ian Wright. And today I'm just going to do a kind of little introduction into the kind of big and complex, I'll try and actually make it easier, world of working with chronic anxiety and how to actually really change that dynamic, which is completely, I think, possible. And this is kind of born out of a lot of years' work and working with children to older adults all the way through with chronic severe anxiety. It's just happened within my practice. It's not something that necessarily that was my speciality at the beginning. I've just spent so much time working with it that I've just sort of developed practices, techniques which link up with the meditative practices and some of the sensory practices I work with, and all of that's kind of come together over a period of years to try to provide something for people who can empower themselves to literally change their brains. And that's the thing from it. So this is unique, this is different, because it's been threaded out of all of the work that we've been doing for a long time. And it came together with writing a book, which took a couple of years actually. But in the end, I put it out, which has come out this week as a sort of course, an online course, because I wanted to walk people through each practice, because reading a practice and then trying to do it, I just couldn't, it didn't work so well. I mean, I've got the dynamics of stillness, which is reading practices, and people get a lot from it, but you need something where I actually walk you through each stage, and that's what I've been doing with this. And we've got the anxiety rates out, so I'm not going to talk about that. I'm just going to just briefly introduce anxiety, just really, and how you would possibly change anything to do with that. And then today we'll do a couple of techniques and a little bit of a meditation based on that, just to wrap up. So, I mean, everybody feels anxious at some points. What is anxiety? Anxiety is a normal reaction to some sort of trigger stressor. The problem is when anxiety becomes a problem and it becomes an abnormal reaction. You know, we all have worry. There's worry, and then when it goes over into causing us distress, when the brain starts looping. And when the brain starts looping and distress is caused, triggers can set you off in this pre-conscious reaction of the body, and it sets off this cascade. So we live in this age now, particularly now, of anxiety, where there are triggers in every direction: safety, finance, fear of health, fear of family health. These are all the key triggers for people who suffer anxiety, and they're all here at once. You know, so and we're seeing an overwhelming amount of people and children with anxiety disorders and in distress. And, I've spent the week working with it, really. And children, which is my speciality, really. Children hold their anxiety physically in their bodies, and it's actually quite easy to treat them when you're working in practice, to actually re-regulate their nervous systems and bring them out of it. But just because of seeing so many children like this, I'm working on this audio book with these kind of embedded practices based around some stories, maybe of Fimicol and the Sky Woman, to teach children practices through story to try and empower themselves. Anyway, that's another day and another story. So it's just, anxiety is the first part of when I go through in the course is to understand this. This is a pre-conscious reaction focused around certain parts of the brain, one being the amygdala. And the incredible thing about the amygdala is it reacts before our consciousness reacts. It's directly wired through to our sensory intake, and we react before we can even think of it. And it's super fast. Triggers, for example, back in the day, your classic trigger was, we're hunters and there's a wild animal, corner of the eye, bang. It sets you off into a fight, flight, fright response, which saves your life. Trouble is that reaction is not necessarily needed now, and actually the same part of the brain, the amygdala, can get triggered by thoughts, feelings, emotions, concerns, as well as our senses. So what happens is that area of the brain gets overstimulated. It actually grows, it actually gets bigger, and other parts of the brain, like the hippocampus, actually get smaller. They actually lose volume, and the amygdala gains in volume. So the brain literally gets rewired into a pattern of anxiety, because it's like a button that keeps getting pushed, and then it starts pushing for no reason. And so you have to take control of that. That's the purpose of it, and it sets off this cascade of reactions through the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, bringing out hormones and neurotransmitters, norepinephrine, cortisol, which gives you chronic effects of stress with all their consequences in the immune system and all the different organs and viscera of the body. So the point is to break the cycle. And so this is what the online anxiety breaks course was about, and why I designed it was to give people tricks to break that cycle immediately. And so you go through a series of these anxiety breaks, which go from very simple to slightly more involved practices. They're sensory practice to change that. If you're feeling an acutely anxious, let's stop that in its tracks. But the main body of the course, and it's 36 chapter course, is about developing a practice where embodies stillness, developing a relationship to stillness and the tide, and dismantling the webs of triggers, these hidden triggers related to belief patterns, to literally start to rewire that brain. And it's a process. It takes time, and it's work, but it's worth it. And I think it's a very valid thing. Anyway, today let's learn just a couple of simple tricks to take us out of a place of anxiety, and then to try and rest into stillness. So these techniques you can do anytime. I mean, when you're feeling anxious, you're not sitting there meditating. A lot of people, that low-level quiet anxiety in the back of the head is when you're doing activity, when you're in life, even when you're walking or you're doing, it's the brain. It's normally thoughts, it's normally feelings, body feelings, triggers, or it's normally emotions. These are the biggest triggers for it. And so if we all sat and meditated for 4-6 hours a day and did mindfulness practices, it would be greatly helpful. But actually, we need something that works in that moment. And so the most simple trick to help facilitate the hypothalamic pituitary axis is to do some simple breathing techniques. Okay, so this is the very basics here. So let's start with that. So this is I would call this vagal breathing, or using a vagal break on the autonomic nervous system, just to calm ourselves. And it's simple. So what we do is we take a breath in and we breathe out. So you breathe in through the nose and you breathe out through the mouth. If you can't breathe in through the nose because your nose is blocked, don't worry. Breathe in through the mouth. And if you prefer to breathe out through the nose, that's fine. Now, what you do as you practice this is you slightly lengthen the out breath. So with each breath in, and then you breathe out. If you can, double as long as the in-breath. Okay? So, okay. If you're over-breathing, you don't want to do this because it blows off too much carbon dioxide. But actually, to do this in the short term triggers the vagal nerve and calms down the body, brings us down. So what I like to bring in with that is when you breathe in lightness. And when you breathe out, you allow your body drop, relax, ground, connect, releasing your day, releasing the tension of the day. It's funny, we do that practice naturally when we're stressed anyways, and it's good as a short-term thing to do to reset the nervous system. It just slightly, as you breathe out, it just slightly brings down the blood pressure just a little bit, slightly slows the pulse rate, has all those autonomic effects of regulation as opposed to stimulation. Okay, so that's your basic vagal break. So if you're going into a pattern of anxiety, when you're breathing, actually just slow down, stop what you're doing, sit quietly, just for a second, watch your brain. Okay, my brain's doing this. Okay, fine. Then just allow your breathing to soften you down. So every out breath softens. So you're not breathing deeply, you're not over breathing, you're not going into a hyperventilation. You're just relaxing through your breath. You're using your breath as a tool to bring you down, to bring your nervous system down to rest. It's very simple. So you breathe out, you just release that tension, release the anxiety, and allow everything to get a little bit quiet. Now, there's a whole sequence of techniques around becoming aware of where your attention is and shifting your attention consciously at will. This is a process to do, but as a simple way in of doing this, and as an introduction to this, you can just do the simple technique of shifting your attention out of your thinking to your body. Now, and I'm going to introduce this technique because we've done it lots of times before in the meditations I do, which is using a kind of body biofeedback. So where in your body feels nice? And if nowhere in your body feels nice, if you just feel a bundle of tension, you can take it to a place, a thinking place. You can go to a place, and that's a whole nother thing. But try this with your body. It could be your little finger. Right? Where feels soft? Where feels nice? There's always somewhere in your body that feels nice. Even if everything's in pain, there's always, you can do this with when people are in severe chronic pain. Where doesn't feel it? Where feels nice? So you're just shifting your attention to something that feels soft, that feels sweet, that feels delicate, that feels nice in your body. Okay, so what the purpose of this technique is to bring your attention to your consciousness, to your attention, and bring it away from what is distressing to what feels nice. And you can do it, it homes you into your body, it grounds you into your body, because we get locked when we're in an anxiety reaction pattern, we get locked in our heads. And you can do both those techniques together by concentrating on the softness in your breathing and feel this slight warmth. Because when you do that breathing, releasing longer out breath of a vagal breathing, it starts to get a little warm in your chest. And so you can focus on where it feels nice, and that little bit of warmth thing and softening feels actually quite nice. So you can bring those two little techniques in together. Brings you into your body, brings you into an attentional awareness of what feels nice in your body. So from here, so a lot of the other kind of breaks that I use are to do with constructing visualizations, like creating safe havens, safe castles, safe places to go to in your mind by consciously shifting your attention. And that's too much to go into in this practice, and there's lots and lots of other breaks as well. But let's just take this from our attention of the softness in our breathing. And if you bring your attention again to that out breath, and as you drop with the out breath, imagine at the end of the out breath, feel the quiet, the stillness that's at the end of the out breath. It's like a well of stillness from which the in-breath comes. It leads you to stillness if you can stay with that softness. So you just wait at the end of the out-breath. Feel that stillness that's there. And allow your in-breath to come from the stillness. Now just let your attentional awareness feel the quiet that's behind the sound, that holds us, this great peace that's always there behind the sound, this great natural peace that can hold us. And allow your awareness to feel that peace that's there. It's always there. And it has a great power in it. And a great power to hold you safely. So just rest in that peace. And allow that peace that's at the end of the out-breath and that is everywhere. Let that peace allow your nervous system to come to balance. It's like it's treating you. It's allow it to bring your body and your brain into a place of quiet. So it's a very brief introduction, and some of these techniques are far more than that because they develop and build on each other, but it's just a little insight into some of the processes that we can get involved with, which can really literally change our brain. The more we develop a practice for ourselves, the more we can literally change the baseline. So the baseline of our brain function comes from a different place. The brain waves slow down naturally. And allow themselves, the more vagal that you are, the more the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis is brought into a place of regulation and not in a state of reactivity, the more the vegetative part of the system can rebalance, meaning your body can deeply rebalance in its physiology. It can come back towards its natural state of health. So it doesn't just affect your brain and your thinking, it actually helps when you slow down those wavelengths, those slow brain waves. That is more like shortwave sleep. And in shortwave sleep, the brain literally cleans itself. So that's why meditation is almost like having a sleep. So if you can spend 20 minutes a day doing that, it's like having an effect of having a good, healthy shortwave sleep. So it's really important. And there's so many systems that the body, that it affects. Just doing simple techniques. Everybody should be doing this stuff. And when I was doing this, I was thinking, gosh, this is, we should be doing this every day. I should probably run one of these every day if I had time. Anxiety Breaks is available on the dynamicsofstillness.learnworlds.com. That's the online kind of course where my other courses are. And I'll be back next week and we'll talk about something different. I wish you well and have a nice evening.